Yo, what's up, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of Trey for Three. It's me, Trey, your host, and I'm here today to go over the Week 1 scores of the NFL regular season here in 2022 and give a little bit of preview for Week 2 here. We're going to jump right on into it. Of course, I'm starting with my boys, the Flock, the Baltimore Ravens. They started off 1-0 with a victory in New York/New Jersey on 9/11, making it more significant than some other games on 9/11. They won that game 24-9. Joe Flacco's first game playing against his former team, of which he won a Super Bowl with, the Baltimore Ravens. This is due to the injury to the Jets' starting quarterback, Zach Wilson. The Jets played a fairly good game on defense, but offensively were kept out of the end zone until the fourth quarter. They allowed less than 275 yards on defense, though. Ravens only had 11 yards rushing going into the half, and Lamar Jackson was their leading rusher with 4 yards. Though passing-wise, Lamar finished with 3 touchdowns on the day, 2 of which went to his wide receiver 2, Devin Duvernay, which seemed to quiet some of the questions about that wide receiver core there since they let go of Marquise Brown in the draft night trade and didn't really do much to replace him. There's been many questions as to how they would perform, and Devin Duvernay definitely quieted some of the doubters there. Though on a negative note, the Ravens did suffer 2 season-ending injuries, which has some fans concerned and flashing back to last season's injuries, which we don't love. Kyle Fuller, cornerback, tore his ACL, and Jawan James, offensive tackle, tore his Achilles. Jawan James' injury especially hurts considering that he was a backup but starting at the time, taking the place of injured Ronnie Stanley, who's still working his way back from an injury originally suffered 2 seasons ago. For the Jets, Joe Flacco at age 37 passed the ball 59 times. That's quite a lot of passes for a 37-year-old, and definitely something that I doubt the Jets want to try and recreate next week, especially since Flacco barely got 300 yards for his effort. The Jets next week do travel to Cleveland to play the Browns in a battle of the backups, Joe Flacco versus Jacoby Brissett. Browns could give them fits defensively, just like the Jets, just like the Baltimore Ravens did. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Jets react and respond to that one, and how they grow and develop from that Week 1 performance. The Ravens' next game is going to be their home opener playing against the Miami Dolphins, and the question is going to be how they'll fare against that cover 0 this time, given how terrible and disastrous their last game was against the Miami Dolphins back in 2021. Another question is, can the defense contain Miami's speed? Especially considering, like I said, that we lost Kyle Fuller for the season, who was a key backup in the secondary, and the fact that Marcus Peters, our ball hawk and cornerback, has yet to return from his season-ending injury from last season. Will we be able to have enough personnel to stop and contain the speed of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? That will be yet to be seen. Another game on the schedule was the Washington Commanders, as they made their debut at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars and came out with a win in that debut, both for the Commanders and Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz finished the day with 4 touchdown passes. The Jacksonville Jaguars had the lead well into the fourth quarter, then blew it. Christian Kirk, though, had some positive notes. He ended up surpassing 100 yards receiving on the day, which hopefully quieted some of the doubters after he got a heavily debated contract in the offseason that many said he didn't deserve and hadn't earned. Number 1 pick for the Jaguars, Trayvon Walker, had a sack and an interception on the day, so I'm sure the Jags are happy about that investment so far. Though defensively, both teams surrendered nearly 400 yards of offense. That's something that they'll both want to work on before their next contest. Wentz ended up winning the game in a game-winning touchdown pass to the rookie Jahan Dotson. It's going to be interesting to see how their chemistry develops, especially given the fact that they already have all-star Terry McLaurin on the roster at wide receiver, and Curtis Samuel, newcomer, is looking to bounce back from an injury-plagued season. On the next game of the schedule, we had the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans playing in our first tie of the season. It came early this year. They tied 20-20. Though the Texans were leading the game 20-3 before being held scoreless for the rest of it. The Colts gained more than 500 total yards of offense and had 13 more first downs than the Texans. And Matt Ryan passed the ball just like Joe Flacco for over 50 times. Well, exactly 50 pass attempts, but by a 37-year-old quarterback with only one touchdown to show for that. Again, I don't think that's something that the Colts are going to want to try and reproduce next week. Ultimately, Indianapolis missed a 42-yard field goal in overtime that would have gave them the win. And we ended the game in our first tie. The Colts will be playing the Jags next in their home opener in Jacksonville. And the Houston Texans will try to bounce back against a Broncos team who are looking to do the same after a disappointing L in Seattle. The New Orleans Saints traveled to Atlanta to play the Atlanta Falcons in a game that was closer than many expected it to be. They came out of that with a 1-point win, 27-26. The Falcons doing Falcons thing seems to be a hobby of theirs. Blew a 16-point fourth quarter lead. Though on the bright spot, Cordell Patterson seemed to pick up right where he left off last year, which is especially interesting given all the talks concerning a running back by committee in their backfield this offseason. But Patterson ended the day with 136 total yards. Speaking of players making a statement, Mike Thomas made one himself in his return with 2 receiving touchdowns in the fourth quarter, which helped give the New Orleans Saints the win. Though other superstar teammate Alvin Kamara seemed to be dealing with a rib injury in the middle of the game and was essentially non-existent throughout. The Saints defense, one of the highly touted units predicted to be one of the top this season, surrendered over 400 yards of offense to an Atlanta team that there were many questions about its productivity on offense coming into this season, and yet they were able to put up 400 yards of offense on the Saints. They definitely can't repeat that next week. The Saints can't, as they have Tampa Tom and the Bucs coming to town. But if they do, they'll lose. Atlanta is also looking likely to lose their next one, having to travel to L.A. to play a Rams team that's pissed off and embarrassed by their Week 1 performance and loss. The Chicago Bears played the San Francisco 49ers in perhaps the first true upset of the year. The Chicago Bears won 19-10, though it was a tough and ugly win on a rain-soaked Soldier Field. Chicago started off slow, couldn't get things going against the San Francisco D in the first half, and then it seems like they might have got some type of magical speech or drank some of Jordan's secret stuff or something, because in the second half they seemed to turn it on some more. Though they finished only going for 5 for 14 on third down for the day, they fared better than the 49ers offense. It was a rough start for Trey Lance in the Trey Lance era in San Francisco. He completed less than half of his throws with an interception, and the defense essentially kept them in that game. Is there a possible quarterback controversy in San Francisco? I'd say so, perhaps if they lose their next game, another one that they should win against the Seattle Seahawks team. Then we have the Chicago Bears, and their next game is going to be against the Green Bay Packers, who are looking to bounce back themselves from their embarrassing loss to the Minnesota Vikings. Speaking of, the Minnesota Vikings beat those Packers 23-7. Justin Jefferson torched the Green Bay defense for 9 receptions of 184 yards and 2 touchdowns, but did most of it without Jair Alexander covering him, who's not even arguably the Packers' best defender, especially in the secondary. For the Packers and their receiving core, the question is it no Lazard, no receiving game? They didn't have much production at all coming out of that one, and they honestly should be embarrassed. A.J. Dillon, the backup running back, led the team in catches and receiving yards, something that can't happen again. Rodgers was held to under 200 yards. The Packers were held to 3 for 9 on third down. It definitely was not that great of a game for the offense of the Green Bay Packers to start off the season. But the Vikings made the debut of Kevin O'Connell look like a dream. Rodgers, after the game, called Justin Jefferson one of the best, if not the best, receiver in the game. Vikings are going to look to keep that up next week against a Philly defense that surrendered a ton of yards to the Detroit Lions. And if the Detroit Lions can do it, so can the Vikings. As stated, the Packers will try to bounce back on Sunday Night Football versus the Bears. The Kansas City Chiefs went to Arizona and whooped, stomped, smacked, and embarrassed the Arizona Cardinals by a score of 44-21. One of, if not the most disappointing game of the opening week. The Chiefs gained 488 yards to go with the 44 points that they put on them. Patrick Mahomes finished with 5 touchdown passes, and the majority of the Cardinals' offensive production came in garbage time. The question is, was that a statement win for the Chiefs or a statement loss for the Cardinals? Are they legit or pretenders? The Chiefs play the first game of Week 2 in Thursday Night Football, which is a runner-up for the game of the which is a front runner for the game of the week, in a potential shootout with the LA Chargers. That'll be the home opener for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs at Arrowhead. And the Cardinals will look to bounce back in a tough road matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders, who themselves are looking for win number 1 of the year. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati offered us one of, if not the wildest game of Week 1. Pittsburgh ended up coming out of that one with a 23-20 victory in overtime. Multiple failed missed opportunities for both teams, though, to win the game in fourth quarter and overtime. The Super Bowl runner-up started off on the wrong foot, and it increases the questions of if the Super Bowl hangover will happen for them this year. Joe Burrow turned the ball over 5 times and had 7 sacks, was sacked 7 times, and that's especially concerning since they invested so much money and there was so much hype over the improvements they made to their offensive line this offseason. Though through all that, the Bengals were still very much in it throughout the game. For the Steelers, there was some bad news as T.J. Watt is now on IR after tearing what seems to be his pectoral muscle in the game. And Najee Harris, star running back, is also given cause for concern after he left the game in the second half with a foot ankle injury that he reportedly plans to play through in Week 2, which is extra concerning considering that his performance before the injury was 26 yards on 12 carries. Losing 2 of the best players on a team that was already expected to struggle is definitely going to hurt. So we'll see how the Pittsburgh Steelers respond under Coach Mike Tomlin. Cincy is looking to right the ship in Texas against a Dakless Dallas team, and Pitt will try to keep things going despite losing T.J. Watt in their home opener this week versus the New England Patriots. In one of the return games of the Week 1 and of the season, the Seattle Seahawks played host to the Denver Broncos and their former franchise quarterback, Russell Wilson. Now at the helm for the Seahawks, the Geno Smith era may have started, may have not, but at the very least, he outdueled Russ, and I'm sure it made the 12th man very proud. And a surprising Week 1 win. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions for Geno Smith. It's been, I believe, 8 years since the last time he started opening week. Definitely didn't look to be too rusty. I'm sure Russ is disappointed in his return. The Denver Broncos fumbled the ball twice on the 1-yard line, which hasn't happened since 1987. Not something to hang their hats on. It definitely felt like the Broncos lost this game more than the Seahawks won. But the one thing that the Seahawks certainly did lose was their star safety for the year, Jamal Adams, who is out for the year with a torn quadricep. It's going to be tough for them to bounce back from such a loss, and it's a devastating blow considering that they were already expected to struggle as a squad this year. For the Broncos, 12 penalties on offense for 106 yards all but helped spell their doom, but it was the final play of the game for them that drew the most criticism as they elected on 4th and 5 to sit their star quarterback, who they just gave a $250 million contract to have their kicker try and make a 64-yard field goal to win the game. And that kicker's name was not Justin Tucker, and they lost the game. All that needs to be said there. The Denver Broncos, the Seattle Seahawks are aiming to show that win wasn't a fluke, though, in their next matchup against the San Francisco team in Santa Clara, who's trying to bounce back from an upset loss of their own in Chicago. And Denver finds themselves in similar shoes as San Francisco, looking to bounce back against a below-average Texans team. In another revenge game, the Cleveland Browns traveled to Carolina to play their former franchise quarterback, Baker Mayfield, and his new team. Given Deshaun Watson's 11-game suspension, many expected the Browns to struggle until he returned, but that may not be the case given their win in Week 1. The Panthers started off slow. The Cleveland Browns defense had a large part to play in that, and especially in the shutting down of Christian McCaffrey, who finished the game with 14 touches for only 57 total yards. On the flip side of that, for the Cleveland Browns, their running backs, Nick Chubb, finished with 141 yards on the ground, and his backup, Kareem Hunt, finished with 2 touchdowns of his own. The game was ultimately won, though, by a rookie, the Browns' new kicker, Cade York, who kicked a 58-yard field goal to win the game. The Panthers and Browns both played the New York teams in Week 2, with the Browns facing the Jets coming off their bad loss in their home opener to the Ravens, and the Panthers will try to bounce back against a subpar Giants team that just upset the Titans. In Philly, the Philadelphia Eagles squeaked out a 38-35 tough win against the Detroit Lions, another tough loss for the Lions. One of many games decided by single digits in Week 1, and for the Lions, they had 7 of their 13 losses last year decided by single digits. So for that trend to continue of tough, hard-fought losses definitely sucks for Campbell and co. They crawled all the way back from down 31-14. DeAndre Swift played a big part in that with 144 yards of offense himself. But it was hard to overcome Philly in their offense, and especially that ground game where they finished with 216 total yards on the ground and averaged 5.5 yards per carry. There was at least 90 yards and a touchdown by both Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders, respectively. There was a hell of a debut by A.J. Brown, who finished with 10 receptions for 155 yards, though it seemed to come at the expense of wide receiver 2, Devontae Smith, in year 2, putting up his first goose egg of his NFL career with 0 catches for 0 yards. The Philly defense, though, allowed 386 yards of offense to the Lions to go with those 35 points, and that's something that they just can't do this week against a revamped Vikings offense that's looking to continue their trend that they started last week. Mayhaps an easier test for the Lions, though, in their home opener versus the Commanders in Week 2. They have the chance and the talent to come out of that one 1-1. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers played the Dallas Cowboys in Sunday Night Football, and it was a tough loss for the Dallas Cowboys on 2 fronts. They not only lost the game, but lost their starting quarterback, Dak Prescott, for several weeks to a broken thumb. Before he went out, the offense just couldn't get anything going in their first game without Amari Cooper. The defense, though, was bend don't break, and had they had help from the offense, might have made it more competitive. For they forced Tampa Bay into 4 field goals and only 1 touchdown. Though on the other side, the Tampa Bay defense was lights out and shut out Dallas' offense after an opening drive field goal. They never scored again. Dallas' season may already be over, certainly so if they can't find a solid replacement. It's interesting to see how they fare against the Super Bowl runner-ups with no Dak, especially since the Bengals just got embarrassed by the Steelers in overtime. The Bucs' next game is going to be a game of the week candidate as they travel to New Orleans to play a Saints team with a better defense than the Cowboys. The Los Angeles Chargers and the Las Vegas Raiders played in one of the best games of Week 1, where the Chargers came out victorious in a 24-19 victory. Sour note, but Devontae Adams had a great game in his debut with 10 receptions for 141 yards, a touchdown on 17 targets. That's a lot of targets. But a tie for his career high in interceptions with 3 for Derek Carr seemed to keep them and prevent them from winning that game. Especially since Justin Herbert on the other side threw for 3 touchdowns himself. Though the run game of the Chargers was pretty quiet, and it's going to be interesting to see how Austin Eckler and co bounce back in Week 2. Though Khalil Mack himself won't need to have a bounce-back game because he started off the season with a 3-sack performance, including the nail in the coffin to win the game against his former team. The Chargers are hoping to stay undefeated in the first game of Week 1 as they play the undefeated Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium. And Vegas will look to win their home opener against an Arizona squad that just got whooped by those same Chiefs. In the first game of Week 1, the Buffalo Bills had a surprising victory against the Los Angeles Rams by the score of 31-10. It wasn't the win itself that was a surprise, but the matter and disparity between the score. That was what was surprising. I mean, this is the Super Bowl favorite, yeah, but they were playing against the defending champions. Expected more of a contest out of this one. One of the more surprising results there, especially since it was a competitive defensive battle in the first half, filled with a bunch of turnovers and went into halftime tied 10-10. Then the Rams were shut out from that point on and fell apart, and the Bills turned it on. They showed why they're the Super Bowl favorites, but the Rams, like I said, didn't show why they were the defending champs. Though Josh Allen showed why he's the favorite to win the MVP right now. 3 touchdowns for him and 3 interceptions and 7 sacks of Matt Stafford shows you who outdueled whom in that one. The Rams hope to win a must-win, should-win game at home versus the Falcons in Week 2. Bills faced the Titans coming off a week 1 loss against the Giants in upsetting fashion as they play in their home opener on Monday Night Football. Speaking of, New York Giants, like I said, beat those Titans 21-20 in a one-score game. Ladies and gentlemen, Saquon Barkley may be back. He finished with nearly 200 yards of total offense and over 9 yards per carry. It was a good first win in his first game for new head coach Brian Daboll. A tough two-point conversion is what gave them the lead, and then a missed Tennessee field goal as time expired is what kept it that way. Derrick Henry was all but a non-factor, averaging less than 4 yards per carry on 21 touches. And number one wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans, Robert Woods, only finished the day with 1 reception himself, though he's returning from a season-ending injury of his own. The Giants are going to be facing the Panthers next at home, looking to go 2-0 in a season where many expected them to start off 0-2. And the Titans hope to bounce back in a tough Monday Night Football matchup against the Super Bowl favorite Buffalo Bills. Miami Dolphins played against the New England Patriots, the team that they seem to be the kryptonite of, and they continued that trend in this one as they won 20-7. Expected struggles on offense for New England given the controversy around the offensive coordinator, offensive play calling, but things were very rough for them in Week 1. They went 4 of 10 on third down conversions and turned the ball over thrice. Plus, Mac Jones seemed to injure his back and is being further evaluated for the extent of that injury. Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill for the Dolphins made their debut, and it seemed to be a great one at that. Tyreek Hill finished with 8 receptions on 94 yards on 12 targets, a team high, and Jalen Waddle complemented that with 4 receptions for 69 yards and a touchdown. Though on the ground they had a quiet day, and the Dolphins finished with only 65 rush yards. Miami travels next to Baltimore to face the Ravens in their home opener, and are hoping to have similar success than they had last year when they ran that cover 0 against Baltimore and they had no answer for it. The Patriots are hoping to bounce back in a winnable game versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially without T.J. Watt at the newly named Acrisure Stadium. Those are all 16 games from Week 1. I had a blast watching them and covering them. Comment down in the section. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your thoughts about the video are, what your thoughts on the Week 1 games were, and give me some predictions for the Week 2 games as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I deeply appreciate it. If you want to be a next level supporter, you can find me on Patreon and become a patron. Find me there at Trey43. You can follow me on Instagram at the same name, at Trey43. I post a lot of updates from my channel and video on there, and a lot of questions for fans to interact with and be able to get their thoughts and comments into my videos. Again, I thank you all for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Trey for 3.